Originally, it was holding a BLM sign in the most conservative part. Made this video. People act crazy. They're shouting at me. Just very, very deeply racist people. And the video blows up. I get a direct message from someone on Instagram. He said something like, "Why don't you walk through Oakland with a White Lives Matter sign?" But Instagram only shows the preview of the message, so it said, "You should walk," and that was all I needed. And that was where the idea for this film began.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud. All about humanity, so this right here for everyone. Uplift, amplify, empower everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud.
Visit sumudpod.com to subscribe and connect with us on social media. You can also support our work by contributing monthly on the Support Us page. Even $10 a month helps us continue amplifying Palestinian voices and those in solidarity. Thank you.
On this episode of the Sumud Podcast, we uplift, empower, and amplify Rob Bliss and his documentary, White Man Walking. This episode is proudly sponsored by Palestinian-American attorney Ibrahim Awad. You may know him as the Karate Attorney. He's a huge member of our community and a big supporter of the podcast. Follow him at Karate Attorney on all social media outlets or visit his website, karateattorney.com. Welcome to the podcast, Rob.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let me read a quick intro if you don't mind. In July 2020, you held a Black Lives Matter sign in Harrison, Arkansas, often called the most racist town in America. The video went viral, but you didn't stop there. You walked 1,500 miles from Jackson, Mississippi to Washington, D.C., averaging 25 miles a day, wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt and carrying a sign that read, "Come walk with me." You documented the journey, and now people can watch it on Watermelon Plus. So again, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So let me ask you, how does one go from organizing water slides, pillow fights, flash mobs, paper airplanes, to walking on behalf of Black Lives Matter?
That's a good question. I think you just grow up a little bit. When you're younger, I had an interest in flash mobs and kind of just fun, dorky stuff, right? But as you get older, you take a look at the world around you and you start wanting to impact it. And you care about what's happening to people in different communities, and you start to mature and you want to take on larger tasks and be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, but what was the impetus really for you doing that? I mean, that's taking a huge risk. That's a lot of time. That was a lot of physical pain that you went through. I mean, amazing documentary, by the way. Just seeing you go through all of that, it felt like we were there with you, walking with you. What was really the motivation for you to do it, though?
So it was a long journey from those early, flash mob events, because I would eventually start making viral videos. And some of those viral videos started to be about different social issues like homelessness, or feeding the sick and elderly, or women's rights. And I started to be excited more about tackling tough topics. I found that the public was responding to them and interested in unique insights and ways into these hot topics and conversations we were having as a country. And then eventually I made holding a Black Lives Matter sign in the most racist town in America. So this was Harrison, Arkansas, which is where the KKK is headquartered. And it's middle of Arkansas, middle of nowhere, real scary place. They have, white pride billboards up in the city. And I went and held that sign there. And was like, what would happen? How would they respond to it? What actually was the impetus for that was that I was sitting on my couch and I was reading an article on CNN, and it was something about an old married couple holding a Black Lives Matter sign in a conservative part of Arizona. And you could read it and it would be like, it didn't take long before Beth and Terry were receiving middle fingers and swear words and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? That should be on camera. What does that look like? What does it look like from their perspective? And so originally it was holding a BLM sign in the most conservative part, but I always desire to take it as far as possible. And so I was like, what's the most heightened version of this video? And it was the most racist town in America. And so I Googled it, and there was articles about this town. And so I went there, made this video. People act crazy. They're shouting at me. They're calling me racial slurs that I actually had to Google because they were so unknown to me. They were like words for Black people that I had never heard before that were actually confusing because they were so niche. It was terrifying to make this video because I knew I was in the headquarters of the KKK. And this was an area where you had some of the most racist people in the world that had news articles written about how racist this place was. And so I held that sign there, and I found the best spot to get people to say things or react was the Walmart parking lot. So I would stand outside the entranceway because people would be driving by only like 15 miles an hour, instead of blasting by at 50 and there's no time for an interaction. And that's when they would really make their threats. They'd be like, I'm going to be back in 15 minutes and you better be effing gone by the time I did, because they were implying they were going to go get something and come shoot me, beat me with a bat, whatever it was. And it was such a scary experience.
Black lives. Have a little pride in your race, brother. White pride, worldwide. You're a dumbass, motherfucker. You dumb shit.
What happened to white lives? We matter too. You're a white man. Crazy.
About 10 minutes, I'm going to be back. You better be fucking gone.
Okay, come back. I went actually to the nearby community where the headquarters are, and it was in a very nearby county. I went to actually a church service of these people. I went down to where they live, this town of population 2,000 people, and it's all the most rundown trailer parks you can imagine. Every road is dirt. You come down the road and there's just a sleeping dog in the middle of the road. And they had a church service, and I went, not in any kind of Black Lives Matter regalia. I just sat there and watched. And their church services are so crazy. The preacher for an hour straight is screaming into a microphone like, it's not the Democrats, it's not Republicans, it is Satan that controls this country. And literally screaming and screaming and screaming. There's like little kids just running around being little kids playing. And there's no singing. It is just screaming about how Satan controls America. And these are the people that would come to Walmart and yell at me about my sign and threaten my life. And the response after I got home and made the video was incredible. It got millions and millions of views. Seemingly every national news publication was talking about this video. Very famous athletes were retweeting the video. But it actually led to a lot of threats against my life. I actually had one threat that I received, some fake Gmail account, and it said, we found you, we know where your family lives, we're going to torture them, we're going to kill you, all this stuff, and very specific and real. And I forwarded it to the FBI, and they said, they're going to look into it, they'll figure out who this is and find it, because there was so much political violence at the time. And I forgot about it. Nothing else happened with that particular email. 4 months later, I get an email back from the FBI, and they say, hey, we found the guy who sent you that email. And they said, don't worry, we don't think he's going to bother you anymore, because it's a 15-year-old boy in New Jersey, and him and his dad are very sorry for what he did. And so imagine you're the father of this 15-year-old, and the FBI show up at your front door and say, where is your son? You'd be like, what did you do?
Yeah.
That kid must have been grounded all summer. It's very funny to me that it's just some 15-year-old boy who probably was very scared when the FBI knocked on his door. But it really shows you who is really behind a lot of these attacks. It sounds so scary, but when you remove the mask, a lot of these people, they just want to scare you. They're not a genuine threat. They may not even be adults. And so that was telling and kind of helped inform me that when I receive a lot of these messages, a lot of it you can just forget about. These people, They just want to screw with you. You're not actually in danger.
So either you're dealing with a 15-year-old literally, or you're dealing with somebody with a 15-year-old brain.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
The video blows up, and people are encouraging me to continue this journey and keep making more work, but I don't know what to do. Until I get a direct message from someone on Instagram. He said something like, "Why don't you walk through Oakland with a White Lives Matter sign, asshole, and see how that goes?" Which I had gotten that message a bunch of times, of course, but Instagram only shows the preview of the message, so it said, "You should walk, ... And that was all I needed. And that was where the idea for this film began.
Did you talk to any of your friends, colleagues? Did you talk to your mom before you decided to do that?
Yes. I talked to my mom and she said, "Do not do that. That's a horrible idea. This is one of your worst ideas you have ever had. It's dangerous. It's not going to work." And everyone was like, "Yeah, you're going to get killed. Just don't do it." But I did. And I wanted to. And I wanted to challenge myself physically and mentally to go on this journey.
So you started, as you mentioned, or in the movie, you talk about starting in Jackson, Mississippi. Why did you start there, out of all places?
I wanted to start in Jackson, Mississippi, because it had a lot of civil rights, historical aspects to that city. Also, I felt was necessary to start in the most challenging of places, which would be in the Deep South, where a lot of these issues are most painfully held, where there's the most conflict on this issue. The only thing I didn't really appreciate was that it was August in Mississippi, and it would make the journey as hard as it was ever going to be right at the very start of it.
You open the movie, or the documentary rather, asking for food and water. Something so simple and something so innocent, yet you're verbally getting assaulted by this other individual, indirectly, I think at that point, threatening you. How did you feel about that? What was kind of going through your mind?
It was pretty scary because I really didn't know how to do the walk, if that makes sense. At that point, I had run out of water and was genuinely trying to find water. And I had to knock on people's door, which getting a knock on the door from someone in a Black Lives Matter t-shirt in Mississippi is just outright dangerous. And so it was very scary, and I tried my best to be as harmless looking as possible because I know people could see me, think I'm trying to break into their house and maybe shoot me. So it felt dangerous, really.
Yeah, I think there was even a moment where, are those walking sticks? I don't know the correct, they're called walking sticks? Okay. And one gentleman asked to hold them or to see them, and then all of a sudden he's chasing you with them.
Yeah, trying to hit me with them.
Jack Bear?
I'm good, man.
Stick you down coach sticks there. I like them.
You like the sticks?
Yes, sir.
You like them?
I think. You video?
Good. Yo.
I'll knock that motherfucker out of your hand. I got the right to because it said no trespassing. So cut the motherfucker out before I beat the hell out of somebody.
Okay, can I have my six bag?
Yeah, you're trespassing.
You asked me over here.
Cut the video off.
Okay.
Well, I'll beat that motherfucker out of your motherfucking hand.
All right, I'll,
You better fucking leave, motherfucker.
All right, I'm
Get
leaving,
the
dude.
fuck off my property.
All right, dude, I'm leaving.
Take your motherfuckers leave.
Dude, I'm leaving. Whoa, buddy.
Better get on, motherfucker.
I'm going, dude. You asked me.
You better run down for it.
Yeah.
I mean, what were you thinking at that moment? Like, oh man, this is just a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't have done this.
Yeah, that guy was crazy. He actually had called me over to come meet with him, but then once I was on his property, he had my sticks and he wanted to hit me with them. Luckily, he had a cane, so he couldn't move super fast, but he was still a way bigger dude than I was, and he said he was going to go get his gun.
Well, he said, I feel intimidated.
Yes.
I'm going to go get my gun. So he was trying to qualify his logic there.
Exactly, yes. He did say that. And I think, honestly, just my presence and the shirt I was wearing was enough to make him feel threatened. And that's a very interesting part about this whole film is you find that the most violent, dangerous people that I come across, we assume that they're just evil, angry people. But if we look beneath the surface, as you mentioned, it's almost entirely driven by fear. Fear is actually the motivator behind a lot of their anger. They believe that because of the message I carry, I'm representing someone that's going to come burn down their town, or I'm going to, be throwing bricks through their windows. And so they're afraid of me. So they respond very aggressively and angrily because it comes from a place of fear. And that was a unique insight that I gained in this process.
So how many days or how many months? Was it 2.5 months?
About 2.5 months, yeah.
At what point did you realize that was the root issue, fear?
I think it wasn't toward the end, because I met this woman in the restaurant, as you've seen. For those who haven't seen the film, this woman genuinely believes that I am like a scout for Black Lives Matter, and I've come into her town, and I'm the very first one. And behind me are hundreds and hundreds of looters and rioters that are soon to arrive in her town. And she thinks I'm scouting it out for them. And behind me come all these people. And so she's very afraid of me, and she's saying, we love the Second Amendment around here, and we'll defend ourselves and our property, and, basically saying we're going to shoot you and your people if you guys come here and riot. She doesn't believe me when I say I'm just a guy, I'm just passing through. It was at that moment when she saw me as representing this mob of people and not just a person. That's when I could tell that this was fear motivated behind the anger.
And I want to talk about other stories. Of course, we want everybody to watch the documentary on Watermelon Plus. But I want to kind of go over some of the planning of you doing the walk. I can't imagine. I don't know. Are you a planner, first of all? Did you kind of map out this whole thing of what you're going to do?
I did, and I wish I did it better. After doing it,
you ran out of water right away, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. And there's a lot of hard learning on that journey.
What would you change if you could go back and plan it all over again?
That is interesting. If I could go back and change different things, I would probably change the route to spend more time in the South. But at the same time, for all I know, I don't survive it if I do that. So if I were to live, I would have probably made my route a little bit more through the South, a little bit more zigzaggy from small town to small town to small town, because oftentimes we were in just complete no man's land, just the most rural of areas, because what people don't realize is 97% of the United States is classified as rural. So that means I'm spending very little time around other people as I work to get from one place to another. So I found that I needed to prioritize as much as I could being in areas where I could naturally bump into other people. So I would have probably prioritized that. Early on, there were logistical things. For example, what I didn't realize at the start is if I'm walking 25 miles in a day, I've basically stranded myself 25 miles outside of town. So what I needed to do is I needed to have someone in a vehicle tail me, or otherwise I would have no ability to get anywhere, get anything, go anywhere. So eventually I had to have a vehicle follow me so that I could still have that movement. Otherwise I would just be stuck in the middle of nowhere, Alabama.
You also need somebody to document if something were to happen. Right?
And the film crew, they certainly have no interest in walking 1,500 miles. They would like to be in an air-conditioned car for the most part. That was another aspect is, the camera gear and stuff needs a place to follow.
So why didn't you ask somebody to walk with you? And I know you did throughout the movie, but I mean really in the planning stages. Mm-hmm. Maybe a buddy or a friend or something. Hey, why don't you come with me and wear this shirt and walk through the South with me rather than do it by yourself?
I think because what I learned is it was an enormous physical task. It's so funny. It's very hard to get people to walk with you for long distances. I remember by the end of the film, I was calling different people and saying, hey, we're finishing the walk here in Washington, D.C. Come out, come walk with me. It'll be great. And initially, I was like, oh, yeah, we'll do the last 12 miles. And in my brain, I'm like, that's nothing. That's nothing at all. And then people are like, oh my goodness, 12 miles is a huge order. And I actually had to take it down from 12 to 10 to 5 to 3 or something like that to walk. And even that was still a huge ask for a lot of people. It's just, I didn't appreciate until the very end of the film that this really is a huge amount of physical labor that I had become normalized to by the end of it.
Yeah, people threaten to use their gun on you. People held their gun while speaking with you as though they were about to shoot you, and quite literally. People attempted to run you over or at least make you get off of the road on purpose. You were beat up, blisters, flea bites. There was one moment where I felt so bad for you. You were eating your dinner in a bathtub full of ice. What moment really stuck out to you out of all of that? What moment were you the most scared of?
The most scared I was in the film is when there was a guy in a really beat up truck pulled up next to me. So I was in the middle of nowhere on the border of Mississippi and Alabama. There must have not been another human around for probably a mile or two. The film crew had actually left to go find us lunch. And so I was all alone in the woods with this guy. And this guy is the number one person I don't want to meet. The people who scared me the most on the walk were very, very poor, white, likely not very educated white men. Were probably the scariest of them all because these were guys who maybe had done prison time, had very little to lose, and they were angry. Those people scared me, and he pulled up to me and, first he was spouting off some crazy conspiracy theories about Joe Biden, I believe. But then, he was threatening me and saying, he's going to go and get something. He wouldn't say what, but he was going to go get something from his house or something. And then he was going to come meet me back here, which is terrifying because he has a truck. I only have my feet. I'm going to continue walking. So I can't really escape.
You barely have your feet at this point. I mean, let's be clear here. You were beat up.
Yeah. So I don't have the ability to really run away. And as he's there, he is so angry. And it just felt like at any moment he could have just looked around and just gone, bap, 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 and just could have shot me right there because there was no one around. And that was very scary. And I was imagining that moment as it was happening. Luckily, he eventually drove off and I didn't see him again, thank God. But there were some scary moments where I felt in danger of my life.
But you stayed so calm, cool, collected throughout the film. So how did you remain so calm, cool, collected, even stoic when people were attacking you verbally?
It's funny that you bring that up because I used to do a lot of improv comedy work, or I would take classes that would teach you improvisational comedy. And I found very quickly that in this situation, there is the crazy man and the straight man, right? Like the normal guy, right? That's very like, what are you doing? You're being crazy, right? And the amount of classes I took and the time I spent doing that, I quickly was able to imagine that these people who were like yelling, saying, and doing crazy things were on a stage together and they are the crazy person and they're doing all these things. And it's my job to say, well, that doesn't make any sense. How can you say this if this is this? And I realized we were in a routine and it allowed me to disassociate from the anger that this person was experiencing or my risk of bodily harm and see it as a viewer would see it or see us on stage together. And it helped me get through it without freaking out about what was actually happening.
Are you sure you weren't just hallucinating at that moment or those points in time? Because there is a moment in the movie, you say something to the effect of, fuck it, pull the trigger or fuck off. You quite literally said, pull the trigger or fuck off.
I did get tired. I did get tired at certain points of dealing with all the threats because it just felt so silly. And I was so sick of being threatened, sick of all the guns and the gun talk. And I was just tired. I was tired of being threatened, and it does wear you down a bit. And you can make it a joke for a long time before you say, all right, buddy, like either do something or just leave me alone, really. Yeah. And so, yeah, that feeling did come up.
Yeah. There was one guy who, again, verbally assaulted you. He seemed like, he was always obviously very racist, but he said, hey, I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. And he had a gun on him as well, if I'm not mistaken.
What are y'all doing?
We're
in trouble.
Walking up, we're walking for Black Lives Matter.
walking for Black Lives Matter? What about white people's matter? What about blue people's matter?
Well, that's a job.
It's still people. It's American people. American.
You don't think black people are American people?
I think black people are American. I have no problem with black people. I have a problem with the organization that want to bring down people like you because you're white.
Don't you?
I am minority.
Brother.
I'm Jewish.
Okay. Then you should know better. You should know
My
better,
people
man.
have been prosecuted way more than any other people in the world.
Then, like, you understand why they're so upset and why they feel like their lives don't matter. No, think about that. Really think about that.
I'm going to stop there and just leave it to you. What's your immediate response when somebody says, hey, I'm Jewish, but what you're doing is wrong? My people were persecuted for years, but the shirt that you're wearing is wrong, and I'm not okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a crazy situation. I feel like what happened was I kept being like, why are you doing this? Or like, this doesn't make sense. If this is true, then how can this be true? You know, and pointing out the flaws in his thinking until he felt defensive. And so I think he fell back on his Jewish identity as like a way to defend himself or give him some kind of protection in his identity so that perhaps I would stop attacking him or that I would be more understanding somehow or that would somehow help his arguments that he was making.
But it looked like you got confused for a second. Well, yeah, man, then you should be on my side kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there was a sense of like, if you have felt persecuted for your beliefs, then wouldn't it make sense to be mindful of other people and their struggles as well? It took him a while to see that, and I don't know if he ever did, but if he feels persecuted for that, then he should be more understanding of other people who feel a similar way.
Yeah. You talked about phrases or words that you have never heard of before, many tropes. I mean, some of them was, we have to send them back to Africa. Some of them were similar to, they don't want to work, they're lazy, or whatever it may be. I grew up in the South. I just sort of relived that entire experience during those moments because those are the things I used to hear as well. Even as an Arab or as a Palestinian, I mean, we were called all sorts of things all the time. What was your reaction to them just saying it so plainly, so easily, using the N-word, for example, right to your face and like it's not that big of a deal?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the circles that they run in or the communities that they're in, because what that means is their friends and their family and the people they spend their time with, if they could say that so openly to me with a camera on them, then certainly it's representative of the community that they're coming from. So I think it is telling that these spaces still exist in America, in a very broad part of America.
I mean, there's even a store, a racist store. I mean, if you don't mind telling the audience that experience, I just couldn't believe that still existed.
There is an incredible store in northern metro Atlanta that is basically a store that sells racist memorabilia, books, posters. I swear to you, they actually sell the scalp of a black person in this store. I have seen it. It's like a little shrunken head, and you can see the hair on it that used to be there. They have even newspaper clippings of like pro-racist beliefs or like some court case that supported their racism or things that went beyond just being museum-like and actually being in favor of it. Jokes and comics, little internet cartoons of caricatured black people that they had pasted up on the walls. I could not believe that it existed. They had Klan robes. They had Nazi uniforms, like genuine Nazi uniforms from World War II. And these things were for trade. You could buy them. You could sell your own stuff to them. It was the life work of the owner of that store.
And you were crazy enough to sit down and talk to the owner of that store with people going in and out. I think there was even at one point, one lady came and spoke to the two of you as well. I was a little bit worried about you because your back was facing the door, so anything could have happened to you at any moment.
Do you think there's differences between white people and black people?
Well, their culture is different. And whenever something like this happened in Atlanta, they revert back to the jungle thing, like closest to Africa that you can be.
That's just so wrong, man. That's just not true. That's not fair.
You
That's
jumped on the jungle comment.
It's a really deeply wrong thing that, black people are inherently criminals and all of that.
It's so obvious if you listen that they are not on your side. And when the hammer comes down, what they're trying to do is start a race war, have been trying to for 40 years. Then they can declare martial law and take all the weapons. And you are going to be out because you're a honky.
It was very scary. I didn't know that store was that store until I walked into it. It was literally just a store that was on the walk. And we saw, the white history sign or something like that was pasted outside. And we were like, what's this? Let's go talk to this guy. Had no idea what I was walking into. And then we just had to keep going, keep rolling with it.
Yeah. The one thing you heard throughout the documentary was, and you hear this all the time, I have black friends. I don't hate black people. I just hate BLM. What was your response to those sort of comments?
That is a very common thing that people say because they want to be able to voice their opinion, but they know how it sounds, so they want to provide some cover for it as well. And I think it's just the truthfulness of that statement is debatable. I think a lot of these people, they probably have like one black coworker, and they're gonna count that person as a friend.
Yeah.
I think they want to say what they have to say without having to have it reflect too much on them, and they want to be able to speak without being judged.
Yeah. Could you go over, if you don't mind, just some of the other characters? I'm going to call them characters. I know it's not a fake movie or a fake events, but other characters that individuals should be paying attention to in the movie and what they're saying.
To talk about a little bit more of the store, in the movie, as I'm talking to the store owner of this racist store, another woman comes in and she yells at me, and she actually says, "Because of people like you, I'm going to name my son Jefferson Davis," which is an incredible line, and really shows who the people are that come to that store.
You think the Civil War was about race?
No,
What do you think it was about?
economics.
The Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about people being able to independently govern themselves. Do you think 8-year-old and 11-year-old boys were dying for slaves on poor farms? No, they were dying for what they believed in. The Civil War is a part of Southern history. It's a part of our blood. It has nothing to do with race. You know that slavery was still legal in the North? I'm going to come back after the 13th Amendment was passed for 2 years. So it wasn't about slavery. When I have my son, who I will name Jefferson Davis, just because people like you.
Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy, and they believe this person in the store believes it wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights, it was about economics. But of course, it's like, a states' right to what? A states' right to slavery? The economics of slavery? That was what it was really about. But these people do not want to focus on that. And so they come to this store to participate in this false narrative about the South, because in there you can buy Confederate books and posters and everything you could dream of that will encourage your world belief. And so people will come there, and she actually gives money to this guy. She talks about how people had protested out his store and had thrown rocks at his store. And so she just hands him like $50 as a donation to keep the lights on, as she said. And those are the kind of people that are keeping this store alive.
What were you thinking at that moment, though? Were you thinking like you're in some sort of nightmare, or?
Yes. I I felt like I was in like The Office or something, and it was taking place in the Deep South, and we had found the craziest backwoodsy people you could find in America. I just couldn't believe that a store like this existed in the year 2020. You would think it would have closed for one reason or another, but these people, they keep patronizing the store.
So the flip side of all of this is the unexpected kindness that you did have. For example, a white woman in Georgia thanks you. A Trump supporter walks with you to build a bridge, I think it was. And a mechanic says Jesus was probably black. And a Buddhist monk talks about pilgrimage. Give me the flip side now, the positive of that experience. Did they serve as some sort of positive energy for you to keep going?
Definitely. There were a lot of people that did choose to walk with me and speak with me and voice their feelings. And it was energizing because for so long during my walk, I was alone. I was completely alone. Before I got out of the South and into the Midwest, it was like maybe 5-8 people had walked with me over the course of, 500, 700 miles. And it was lonely. It was very lonely. There's a scene in there where I believe I'm starting to walk through Nashville, and people are honking their horns to be nice. And I break down crying because it had been so long since anyone acknowledged my existence and wasn't just trying to basically beat me with a stick that I started crying because I had been so without acknowledgement, and I was so worn down by the walk and by the elements that to receive kindness of any kind was deeply moving and helped power me through the rest of the walk.
You even talked about your mom quite a bit. I can't remember what state it was where you were walking through, and I think you were walking on the leaves, and that took you back to growing up in Michigan. The impact this had on your mom and those moments where you thought about your mom, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I grew up in Michigan, and we lived in a very wooded area. So every fall, it would be an explosion of orange and yellow and red. There would be giant leaf piles all over the yard. I remember running and jumping into them like they were a big pillow. And I hadn't lived in Michigan for a long time. I had moved away at least a decade ago and had been living in coastal areas where that wasn't really the experience. And so walking through Ohio and Pennsylvania in October, I was reconnecting with my childhood. And the thing that I didn't expect about the walk is it wears you down so much, and you're so fatigued to the point that sleep does not rejuvenate you. Even if you sleep 10 hours, you feel as tired as you did when you went to bed.
I slept for 10 hours, but it doesn't really matter. I still feel the same.
Why are you doing it?
I couldn't even tell you right now. Like, I'm doing it because I'm doing it. Like, because I said I would. Okay, we should go. Okay.
It removes all your layers, your defensive layers of your emotions. And so a little thing can shock you. I remember I once walked by a store and they had balloons outside, like just some helium balloons. And the smell of the latex just hit me like, wow, like what was that smell? Because you're so deprived. You're really actually sensory deprived on this walk because it's very repetitive. You're doing the same thing. You're almost chained in a way to the walk as if like you must keep walking every day. So when I walked through these leaves and smelling them, it just reminded me of my childhood and how alone I felt on this walk. And it made me reconnect with my relationship with my mother.
When you're saying this, it reminds me of that very moment, and I can't remember the wonderful young lady when she told you that you had to step out of yourself to finish this. In order for you to really get this done, you're going to have to do something that you've never done before and dig very deep.
And I sat down with BLM activist Kiara Yakita.
I would love your perspective about, the walk itself, because you have a very interesting perspective. What's your take on it?
I super appreciate what you're doing, and it's hard work. At the end of the day, it is hard work. You're sacrificing your safety and your body, and you're putting yourself into places that Black Lives Matter cannot safely go. If I went to that same town and stood next to you, I probably would have got killed that day. You're going to have to step out of yourself to finish this. It's something bigger that you're chasing. So just stay true to the purpose and focus on the people who can't walk. You know what I mean? You're walking because Breonna Taylor can never walk again. You're walking because George Floyd can never walk again. All these miles that you're accumulating are miles that they can no longer walk because they were executed by the police. Walk with their spirit and for their spirit. And I think that will keep you going.
Did you take that in at that moment? Did you agree with her? Did that motivate you?
Yes. It did motivate me, and I needed it because I was still going through the Appalachian Mountains at this time. The total elevation for this entire walk was the equivalent of if I climbed up and down Mount Everest twice. So every day it was like just enormous elevation changes, which were brutal on my feet because they would force my foot to be in an inclined position, which is very unnatural for the ankle to be pressed up like that all day long. And so I was dealing with some very deep physical pain that jeopardized the walk. And talking with her and being encouraged by her and other people was how I was able to keep going.
You wanted to give up at one point, probably many points, but you verbalized wanting to give up at one specific point in the documentary. What made you keep going?
So it's an interesting story. The hardest part of the walk was, as if you think about it, was the very start, because it was 2020. I was in quarantine lockdown like everyone else. I had never been a track star, not even an athlete. I was actually quite an alternative kid. I had hair to my shoulders. I wore tight clothes. I liked alternative music, I was as far from the football field as you can imagine. And I like to exercise a little bit in my adult life, but it wasn't anything crazy. I was on the couch like everyone else. And my step counter was about to go from 2,000 a day to 68,000 a day. And I remember being on that concrete and that asphalt in August in Mississippi, and I was going to have to go from quarantine levels of activity to doing a full marathon every day for roughly 60 days straight. So imagine you wake up and do the New York Marathon, and then you got to do it again the next day and the next day for 60 days in a row. That's what I had to do. And I remember on the first day, everything was fine at the start. I was texting my friends and things like that. But by about mile 5, mile 6, mile 7, I could feel this aching coming on in my tendons, in my knees, in my groin, in my thighs, in my calves. My whole lower body was in deep, deep pain. And by mile 11, I couldn't go any further. I was like, I gotta stop. This is enough for today. I was completely sore in my lower body, and so I went home, went to some $60 a night motel and crashed. Woke up, got back to the same spot, had someone drive me there. And now my body from the moment I start is in this pain. And I kept walking. And by mile 11, 12, I said, I can't do this. This isn't possible. There's no way. I can't even get half of the amount of miles I need a day. It's over. And so I call the crew and say, don't bother coming. I even buy a flight home. But I'm sitting in my tow room feeling sorry for myself. And I think I bought a couple Bud Light seltzers. I had a couple drinks, Liquid Courage. And this Liquid Courage made me be like, you know what? I'm not going to give up that easily. I'm going to try again tomorrow. And I go out tomorrow and I feel this I'm going to do it-ness. And I go out and get 21 miles. And I'm like, oh my God, I could really do this. I actually believe that this is possible. And I start optimizing how to do it. I get smarter about how to do it. I get walking sticks, which doesn't make it easier in terms of how much force it puts on your body, because you still have to propel yourself forward. But now my upper body can help push me forward and isn't idle. It can share the workload of my lower body. And I learn how to do the walk, and I'm in such pain and I feel so crazy for what I'm doing. And I just embrace it and allow myself to move past the pain. And I stop caring about the signals that my body is sending me. And by that point, I eventually realized that, yeah, I can actually do this.
Have you fully recovered physically and even mentally? Hell, even emotionally?
You know, what's crazy is I was doing 25 miles a day, some days upwards of 32 miles a day. And I have no lingering pains, physical problems from that walk. I have no knee pain. You would think all those miles, but I haven't. I really haven't. And that's been a real blessing. And mentally, it changed me forever, because by the end of the walk, I felt like I was walking on clouds. I felt like I could do anything that I set my mind to. I actually had a crazy idea for a documentary that I pursued for a year and a half after making this, in which I was going to try and become an NFL kicker, which is an insane idea and definitely didn't work and was a huge waste of time. But it showed how much I believed in myself after that walk, that I was crazy enough to think that was even possible for me to do.
Have you ever kicked a football?
No, never kicked, never had. It had no experience. It was Don Quixote like. I was just a ridiculous journey I was on. But that's the level of confidence I had after this, is because I had done something that felt so impossible that I felt limitless. And I've carried that with me ever since.
That's amazing. So talk to me about the response in the film from the Black community and even outside of the film. Their reaction, the commentary, the support, or lack thereof in many cases. I don't want to say you were mocked, but jokes were made towards you, I think, a few times. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. You know, I think myself and a lot of people thought that people would be negative about this. I think one of the reasons it took so long for this movie to come out was because there's like this inherent part that doesn't make sense, this cognitive dissonance of like, it's a movie about race, but the main character is a white guy. What the heck is that about, you know? And I think some networks and production companies were like, we don't really want to deal with that. That doesn't sound right to us. But then I got partnered with Ludi and Olsen Group and all these people that were actually very supportive of making this film and liked the message of it. And so I was really careful in this film to be specific about what I would talk about. From day one, I was like, this is not a movie about race in America or like the history of racism in America or the history of Black people's experience in America. This is the story about a guy going on a walk wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, and that's it. Like, that's what I'm licensed to speak to, is what it's like to do that. And the moment I get outside of that, I think that's where this film could get into trouble, is trying to take on more than it has a right to. And so I think by limiting the scope and just talking about my own experience, I was able to have a very positive response from people, because I chose not to speak for other people, only for myself.
So let me ask you more directly, because somebody asked me this when I encouraged him to watch it. Why is a white guy doing this?
One of the reasons why I made this film was I felt like I was the only person who could do it, in terms of I was the only person who I thought could physically walk that distance, would be willing to try to walk that distance, and could walk that distance in a Black Lives Matter shirt and not lose their life for it. So as seen in the film, some other activists said, you know, if I was with you on this walk, or if I stood next to you holding that sign in the most racist town in America, I could have gotten killed that day. The physical risk was something that I felt I could take on because I was white. And I could carry this message through these places where other people would have not felt safe. So that motivated me to make the film, because it didn't feel like anyone else could have done all three of those things or qualified for all of them. And sometimes when you feel like the only one who can do something, it motivates you to be like, well, then I need to step up and do it. So I think because of the color of my skin, I was able to enter into these places, and they didn't see me as the other or like some foreign thing. They saw me as one of them, more like a black sheep that had gotten lost. And oftentimes when people would speak to me, they would speak to me not like I was a threat. They would often speak to me like I was confused, or I had like lost my way, or I had misunderstood things, like I was a good kid and I just kind of got things mixed up, and let me talk to you. Let me figure this out with you because I think you don't really understand things, which is helpful and was helpful for the movie because it meant that people would have a conversation with me instead of just get out of here, you know? They were willing to talk because of the color of my skin.
There was a point in the film where, I can't remember where it was, but you landed at this barbecue of like-minded individuals, and boy, were you hungry. It was very clear you were hungry at that moment too, but they welcomed you. I viewed them, again, specifically from the Black community, sort of encouraging you, and adjacent groups encouraging you to keep doing this and to finish the job.
Are y'all hungry? Are y'all ready to eat?
We'll get some food. I think we will.
Anybody who wants to march for this young man right here, he has walked 800 miles to get here. He just wants people to walk behind him around this block.
Thank you. It means a lot to me.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now! What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now!
One Robbie to another. I'll be thinking about it. I have no words. I've never seen anything like that this whole trip.
Fair to say that that was the gas, if you will, that was put into your tank to keep it going?
Yeah, I think that people motivating me to keep walking helped guide me and helped encourage me. But to be honest, for the vast majority of the walk, I was in the Deep South where there was zero encouragement. No one knew what I was really doing, and I had to find that encouragement by myself. And I, of course, started this journey with motivations of all the things I just talked about, of why I felt uniquely qualified to go on this walk. But when you're completely alone and there's nothing but cows around you, because you're in rural no man's land, that motivation has to come from inside. And after dealing with the elements and the rain and the heat and the sun, and the cars, my God, the cars.
By the way, I've never seen somebody so sunburned the way you were. That was crazy. It looked like flesh was coming off of your leg.
Yeah, I have the craziest tan lines that you can possibly imagine. So I think the motivation early on couldn't come from other people because those other people are not there with you on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And I think I was withered down by the elements until my motivation was simply, I'm going to do it because I can and because I said I would do it. And that's it.
Yeah. Would you do it all over again?
I've always thought, like, how could you do the walk again? Would you be able to again? And the answer is no. Okay. I physically could. But I have always been a kind of person where when I have a creative idea, I like to do it and move on to something else. Even like social issues, like I really like to jump around to different topics versus like making one single issue my for life bread and butter. So I would not want to, though. It is a very punishing experience.
Let me ask that differently then. Should you do another walk?
I think I can make more of an impact doing something else. I think it would be great if this can motivate people to see that it can be done and show people that they can take this path and how to do it. And I would hope that the work that I've done could inspire people to take that path in their own lives.
You're not going to do it again.
I don't think so. I'm getting older, you know, it's just like it's a lot. It really eats up your life. And I think of course, it puts everything else in your life to a complete stop. Like not only did I have to walk 25 miles a day. I also had to star in, produce, and direct a feature film at the exact same time I was walking 25 miles a day. So it basically puts everything else in your life out the window, even your family relationships, how often you can even talk to your family or friends or anyone. You have no life for months. And that is punishing, and it does impact the people around you. You know, my mom would watch my location as I walked because she constantly thought she was going to see me get dragged into the woods and shot. You know, it's a mental strain, not just on you, but on other people that love you.
So if you end up doing this again, let's throw a Free Palestine shirt on you and see what happens.
Yeah.
Which leads to my next question. What would happen if you did put a Free Palestine shirt today and walk through the South, the same exact path that you used last time?
It's a good question. Personally, I think that Palestine is a global issue that a lot of these, you know, real hillbilly Southerners just wouldn't really, they vaguely might know about it, but I think it wouldn't provoke them in any way. They'd probably ask, where is that? You know, I think these are people with really big blinders on, that they may have never left their hometown ever. They may have not even left the state. They may not, if you say, where is Vermont on a map, they may not be able to point to it. I think the problem in America is we are so America-centric that we forget about issues like Palestine. We don't put enough focus on them because we are so focused on our own world as if nothing else exists. And so I think they wouldn't care about it as much as they should.
What's the one takeaway you want the audience to have after watching this?
I think people should realize that they are capable of so much more than they realize. They should see that I really don't have very many special traits that allowed me to do this walk, whether it's the physical aspect of it or the ability to talk to these people. I hope to inspire people to be brave and bite off more than you can chew, and set impossible goals and try and hit them, because it will make you feel limitless in your abilities, and you can really make an impact on people's lives.
So I'm going to flip the question a little bit on you. What was your one takeaway from all of this whole experience leading up to today?
What I took away from this experience, and maybe this is just personal and not really relevant to other people, but I was amazed by my ability to be that social. I'm actually a bit of an introverted person. I like to keep to myself. My worst nightmare is going to a party and I am just an acquaintance of one person there and I don't know these 20 people and they're all off talking by themselves. That's horrible to me. That's my worst nightmare. I actually feel very socially drained after spending time with a bunch of people and have to go lay in bed and be quiet because it's so tiring.
You and I are going to get along, my friend. We're going to get along, yeah.
So this film made me believe that I really can talk to anyone, because I met just about everyone on it. And it empowered me to believe that, yes, I can be social, I can start conversations with people, and I can bridge these connections no matter who people are.
So I know you've done many interviews about this film and you've been asked all sorts of questions. But what questions should I have asked you that I didn't?
It's always a good question to ask that, and people don't ask it enough.
The reason I asked that question, there's a piece of you that you gave away for this project. And I feel like there are more layers to it. And maybe this is just me reading into things, but there's just more layers to it than one could imagine.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you're sometimes thinking they really will never know this fact, or they will really never understand what happened here.
Yeah. I think one thing that I should speak about is the sensory deprivation of the experience, because there are many days where you don't meet a single person. You don't talk to a single person. It's just raining all day and trucks are blasting you with water vapor off the road and you're soaking wet from head to toe and there's no one around. There's nothing to do, I found that the moments when I got to eat, 95% of the time it was Subway, because that's the only thing that was available within, 20 miles of where I was, that it took so many layers off of me. And I think that's in part why I wanted to go on the walk, was because I am naturally a very baseline person. I don't really get excited or angry or super sad. I'm a very chill person. And I knew that if I was just smacking myself in the face every day, I would have an emotional reaction. I would emote and live and go through an experience. And so that's kind of become my style, which is throw myself into dangerous situations with unknown outcomes to see how I respond to it. So that was an experience, was what is it going to be like when day after day it's the same thing? Like, oh my God, like Ohio broke my brain because it was so flat and it looked the same for hundreds of miles. I had a near mental breakdown because it just felt like I was in a simulation of the same trees, paths, everything was the same. And I think that was a really challenging mental aspect of what do you do when every day is the same? I felt like I wanted to escape the walk as best as I could. When I wasn't walking, I actually would drink more than I should. I would do anything to escape the experience at time because I was just left in my own mind, and being stuck in those environments for so long can be really challenging for yourself.
Yeah, fair enough. So we have a segment, we give an option where you look at the camera and either give a message to the community, give a message to the youth. I was thinking for you, perhaps, give a message to individuals that aspire to do social justice work similar to yours.
So for anyone who's looking to do social justice work, I really think that the best way to do it is to come from a loud place. So loud in this context means doing something that will get attention but is inherently unique or creative and isn't just red meat and preaching to the choir, if that makes sense. So it would be better to find a way to have a unique, creative way in that's going to make the news, get people talking, and see what can be done to make something that is unexpected or will provoke an emotional reaction. Because the more that we can stimulate people emotionally, the greater they are to share the content or talk about the work or what's happening, because they have felt something through experiencing it and want to share that with friends and family and give them the same emotional experience that they had. So search for loud, interesting, creative ways into social justice work that can break through the ice and get people talking.
It's been a pleasure. Where can we follow your work, follow you on social media? Where can we find you?
Yeah, people can go to Rob Bliss GR on Instagram, or that's my handle for pretty much everywhere, and follow me there, and I try and post when I can.
Okay, great.
Listen, stay tuned, cause it's time for Sumud.